The room smelled like antiseptic and old paper. Machines beeped like they were bored of saving people. My mother was shrinking into her hospital bed, bones wrapped in tissue, cheeks hollowed, voice barely a whisper. Her eyes stayed closed most of the time now, but when they opened, they searched for me, not for the doctors, not for her priest, not for miracles. Me. And I was there. Every day, every damn hour I could spare, sitting in that stiff vinyl chair, listening to her labored breathing and praying for silence or for healing, whichever came first. Then my phone buzzed. Again. "Can you send the hotel confirmation?" the text read. "The vibe here is depressing." I stared at it for a full minute, like it might shift into something else. Something human. But no, that was it. Not "how is she?" Not "do you need anything?" Not even a throwaway "love you." Just "you're ruining my Vegas weekend." I didn't reply. What would I even say? "Sorry, my dying mother is killing your Instagram mood board." Instead, I leaned closer to Mom. Her breath rattled, slow and heavy. I squeezed her hand and whispered that I'd be right back. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just stood up, walked into the hallway, and scrolled my thumb over the same message again. Then I silenced my phone and went back in. When I got home that night, the scent hit me first. Strawberry polish and cheap perfume. She was sitting cross-legged on the couch, painting her toenails, humming to a song that hadn't been relevant since college. The TV was playing one of those reality shows where people scream at each other in rented mansions. She didn't look up. "You're always so grim lately. It's ruining my Vegas weekend vibe." Vegas. Vibe. She was still using words like vibe, unironically, at 43, like she was auditioning for a reboot no one asked for. "I'm sorry my mother's chemotherapy is harshing your poolside aesthetic," I said flatly. She rolled her eyes. "See, that right there? That tone. You've just been in this dark place. It's like you're addicted to being miserable. Everyone notices. You're bringing it into the house. Into us." "Into us," I echoed, nodding. "Right. And that's when it started. Not the pain. That part had been simmering for years. This was different. This was the moment the heat went out of it. Like when a flame finally dies and all that's left is smoke and silence. I began watching her. Not angrily. Not like I wanted revenge. More like I was studying a painting in a gallery. One I'd walked past every day but had never really seen. How she talked over me. How she never asked about the hospital. How she joked to friends about being a chemo widow whenever I wasn't around to hear it. But people talk. And screenshots don't lie. It's strange, the things that break you, you'd think it would be the diagnosis. Or the first night I helped my mother to the bathroom and she sobbed from humiliation. Or maybe the first time I caught my wife laughing in the other room while I sat on the floor beside the toilet bowl holding my mother's hair back. But no, it was strawberry nail polish and a sentence. "You're ruining my Vegas weekend vibe." That's the moment I understood something that had been whispering at me for months. She didn't love me anymore. She didn't see me anymore. And worse, she didn't respect the things that made me human. Now, I know a lot of people just nod through that kind of realization. Let the resentment rot inside them while they go through the motions. But I'm not wired like that. I don't do dramatic scenes. I do clean exits. And while she was planning her poolside escape, I was planning something else entirely. And by the way, if you're still reading, do me one favor. Hit the subscribe button. It's free, takes a second, and it helps the team keep telling stories like this. More than 97% of you listen without subscribing. And honestly, that little click makes a big difference. Back to her. That night, she asked if I could drop her at the airport on Friday. She was excited. New swimsuit, reservations at some overpriced rooftop bar, probably one of those places where they pour champagne into towers of glasses for the gram. I said, sure. She kissed my cheek absently, said something about Botox and a spray tan appointment, then wandered off to our bedroom like we were strangers who shared a kitchen. And that was fine by me, because the next morning I'd start preparing, not for her trip, for her absence. The next morning, she bounced into the kitchen like she was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial, robe tied loose, skin still glistening from some new firming serum that smelled like melted plastic and eucalyptus. She opened the fridge, wrinkled her nose, and grabbed a green juice she'd made yesterday, one of those chlorophyll in a blender monstrosities she swore added glow. 2 more days, she sang, holding the bottle like it was champagne. Poolside mimosas, spa treatments, digital detox, cabana boys. She glanced at me, gauging my reaction. I was cracking eggs into a pan, deliberately not looking at her. And no offense, she added, but I need this. All this energy around here lately, it's been like radioactive. You know what the psychic said? If I don't clear my aura soon, I'll start absorbing your sadness. It's science. I turned just enough to raise an eyebrow. Psychics are scientists now? She laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. She danced around the kitchen, humming again, checking the messages on her phone while muttering things like, ugh, why do airport selfies always look tired? And I should get my brows touched up before I go. I slid 2 plates on the table. Scrambled eggs, toast, avocado. She didn't notice that I used the cracked plate. Hers was pristine. I sat down. When exactly are you flying out? I asked casually, sipping my coffee. She beamed. Friday morning? I got the early flight, so I'll be poolside by 10. Finally, a break from all the gloom. All the gloom. I repeated softly. She didn't hear the way I said it, didn't catch that I didn't say we. She just prattled on about some rooftop brunch place she'd found on Instagram and a manifestation workshop one of her college friends was hosting while she was in town. Something about moon water and journaling. I chewed slowly, nodded, listened to every word, and none of it. Later that day, I stopped by the hospice center. The nurse met me in the hallway, her eyes tired but kind. She's holding on, she said, but not for long. Inside, my mother was sleeping, peacefully, this time. Her hand twitched when I touched it. I sat with her for an hour, maybe more. Said nothing, just listened to her breathe and let the silence settle around us. When I got home that evening, the house smelled like coconut tanning oil in desperation. She was packing. The suitcase lay open on the bed like a gaping mouth, swallowing swimsuits and stilettos. She was holding up 2 dresses. Which one says, I'm single but not desperate? She asked, smirking. Kidding, mostly. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You really think you're single? She looked up, startled, then laughed again. Relax, I meant like, emotionally. I just need time to breathe, you know? Some space, I'm not leaving you. She tossed one of the dresses into the suitcase and turned toward the closet. You're so intense lately. It's not your fault, I know. But I can't carry your sadness and my own stuff. I just need a reset. That word, reset. Like this was a phone glitch. Like you could hold down 2 buttons and erase everything painful, and suddenly the screen would glow clean and new. You're right, I said, voice low. You deserve that vibe. She smiled at that, thought it was support, approval even. She didn't notice the way I'd stepped back emotionally, the way I wasn't in that room anymore. She didn't ask why I hadn't packed anything for myself. Didn't notice that I hadn't booked time off work. Didn't even blink when I didn't offer to drive her, because in her mind everything revolved around her getaway, her rebirth, her curated, filtered escape. She had no idea she'd already been left behind. I stood there for a moment longer, watching her fold a silk robe, fuss over makeup brushes, slide a little travel-sized bottle of perfume into a mesh pouch. Then I walked into the guest room, closed the door, and opened my laptop. It was time to begin the real reset, not hers. Mine. Thursday morning. She left for her pre-trip cleanse, a 90-minute massage, followed by a body wrap and some kind of cryofacial that promised to realign her frequencies. She kissed my cheek on the way out like she was brushing lint off a jacket, said, "Don't miss me too much, Mr. Gloom," and closed the door behind her. The second I heard her car pull away, I moved. First stop, the safe. I pulled the folder I'd tucked behind the old tax documents. Copies of account statements, notarized copies of the house deed, power of attorney paperwork Mom had signed when things started getting bad, and the separation documents I'd asked my lawyer to draft 6 weeks ago. At the time, I wasn't sure I'd ever use them, but now they felt like a loaded weapon. I logged into the bank accounts. The joint credit card, frozen. The backup card she kept for emergencies, which somehow included brunches and Botox, deactivated. Then the real work began. Passwords. Netflix, utilities, our cloud storage, the security system, even her old Pinterest board where she once saved wedding ideas with the nauseating title, Our Forever Vibe. I changed them all. New logins, new security questions, 2-factor auth set to my burner phone. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance, precision, control. The locksmith showed up 30 minutes later. Professional, fast, didn't ask questions. By the time he left, I had 2 new keys in my pocket, and her old one sat in a plastic bag on the counter with a yellow post-it, outdated, like your stories about your Vegas glow. I walked into the bedroom. Her vanity was still a mess. Mascara tubes, self-tanning drops, a scented candle that smelled like coconut lies. I placed a small velvet ring box in the center. Inside was her engagement ring. Platinum, solitaire, exactly what she'd begged for. Tucked beneath it, folded neatly, was the original receipt, dated, signed, paid in full. She used to say that ring made her feel chosen. Lately, it made her feel bored. I stepped back, stared at the vanity for a moment, then left it exactly as it was. After that, I packed. Not everything, just enough. Clothes, important files, a few framed photos of my mother, back when she still danced barefoot in the kitchen and drank red wine like it was water. I didn't touch anything of hers. That was the point. She'd made it clear she needed space. I was giving her all of it. I unplugged the Alexa, disabled the Wi-Fi, left the house in a state of frozen time, like a museum exhibit titled, "What Used to Be Us." That evening, she walked through the door glowing like someone who thought the world adored her. "I booked a last-minute mani-pedi," she chirped, tossing her bag on the couch. "And guess what? The spa upgraded me to a luxury suite when they heard it was a solo trip. Manifestation works, babe." I was at the dining table reading, calm, centered, far from where she thought I was emotionally. She floated around the living room, holding up outfits against her chest, a glittery gold dress, something sheer and black. "You'll miss me," she laughed, doing a little twirl. I met her eyes for the first time all day. "Sure." She grinned, satisfied, didn't even flinch at the flatness of my tone. She thought I was sulking. Wounded, she liked it that way. Made her feel powerful. And I let her. For one more night. Because tomorrow morning, she'd wake up to everything she asked for. Just not the way she planned. She was snoring softly, her mouth slightly open, one arm draped across the pillow like she was practicing a billboard ad for Serenity. Beside her, the gold-trimmed suitcase stood zipped and ready, like a loyal pet waiting to be walked through the terminal. Her phone buzzed from the nightstand, another promotional email, probably from some healing resort or astrology app, but she didn't stir. It was 3:27 a.m. I sat at the kitchen table, the light dim, the silence absolute. Everything was laid out in front of me. Documents, identification, checklist. My lawyer, Paulson, had sent everything weeks ago, back when I'd confessed I didn't know what I was still holding on to. "Just in case," he'd said. "Doesn't hurt to be prepared." I used to think preparation was cold, heartless. Now I understood it was mercy. I wasn't lashing out, I was letting go. Cleanly, signature here, initial there, notarized via Zoom at 4:02 a.m. Paulson looked tired but unsurprised. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked, even though he already knew the answer. I nodded once, said nothing, and he gave a weary smile. Then welcome to the other side. By 6 a.m., the courthouse filing system had accepted the upload. Electronic timestamp, confirmation receipt, case number. Legally, the separation was in motion. No screaming, no scandal. Just one more dead thing I was signing the death certificate for. While she still slept upstairs, I walked quietly outside, handed the new set of keys to the second locksmith. He'd come before, the one who replaced the outer locks. This time he reset the deadbolts and swapped out the garage opener frequency. I didn't even need to explain. He did his job without a word, handed me the receipt, and nodded once. The sun was barely up. I stood at the threshold, one last glance at the kitchen where we used to slow dance while pasta boiled. The hallway mirror where she'd adjust her lip gloss and ask, "Do I still make your heart race?" The answer these days was no. Not from love, anyway. I set my phone on the kitchen counter, opened our shared chat, and typed, "Trip canceled, separation filed, this is step 1, sent." I didn't wait for a reply. I walked out the front door, got into the car, and drove to the hospital. When I stepped into the room, the first thing I noticed was the quiet, the kind that doesn't echo, it absorbs. My mother was thinner than yesterday. Her hand in mine felt like warm paper. The nurses said she hadn't been responsive since 2 a.m., but she still twitched when she heard my voice. I sat with her for hours, told her everything I could think of, how spring was coming early, how the neighbor's dog had finally stopped barking at the garbage truck, how the mailman still wore those ridiculous shorts. Mundane things, safe things. I didn't tell her about the filing, or the suitcase, or the woman who'd stopped being my wife long before this morning. Mom wouldn't have wanted me to carry that in here. Her last wishes were simple. Be free, be kind, be done with people who drain your soul. At the time, I thought she meant distant relatives or old colleagues, but she knew, somehow she always knew. By early evening, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Once, twice, then again. I ignored it, just sat there and watched the slow rise and fall of my mother's chest. Eventually, when the nurse came in to check her IV, I stepped into the hallway. 11 missed calls, all from her. I scrolled through the voicemails without listening, each one timestamped, getting closer together as if panic had accelerated her fingers. The last one was only seconds old. A text followed. What do you mean? Trip canceled. Is this a joke? What the hell is happening? I locked the screen, slid the phone back into my jacket, and returned to the room. My mother hadn't moved, but she was still breathing, still here. Unlike the woman I'd left behind, because some endings don't come with explosions, just quiet, and signatures. The airport buzzed with its usual chaotic optimism, suitcases rolling like thunder, boarding announcements echoing in multiple languages, people rushing nowhere and everywhere all at once. She moved through it like a celebrity whose invitation had arrived late. Full glam, lashes sculpted, lips lacquered, hair styled into those effortless curls that take an hour and 3 products. Her heels clicked confidently on the tile, her carry-on trailing behind like a loyal dog. She was already envisioning the Instagram stories. Poolside mimosas, gold sandals, neon signs that said things like good vibes only. At security, she flirted with the TSA guy. At the terminal lounge, she ordered a matcha latte and complained about how heavy the energy had been at home. She didn't notice the app notification from the airline, or rather she saw it and assumed it was spam. Everything in her world was always going to plan, until it didn't. Boarding was called for her gate. She stood, adjusted her oversized sunglasses, indoors of course, and strutted forward. The agent scanned her boarding pass. Beep, not the good kind. The agent frowned. Scanned again, beep still red. I'm sorry, he said, polite but robotic. This isn't valid. Do you have another form of payment or confirmation number? What do you mean? She laughed. This was booked last week. First class. Under Carlson. Try again. He tried. Nothing. She handed over the Amex card she always bragged about, the one she used for everything from hair appointments to overpriced throw pillows. Declined. She blinked, swallowed, tried a different one, declined, and another declined. Each beep was a nail in the coffin of her certainty. People behind her started shifting uncomfortably, sighing, checking their watches. She stepped aside, flustered, phone already in her hand, acrylics clacking against the screen as she dialed. He answered on the second ring. Something's wrong, she said. Too loud, voice tight. My flight isn't working. My card, none of my cards are working. Did something happen with the bank? There was a pause, not long, but long enough for her to feel it in her spine. Then his voice, calm, flat, devoid of heat or hate, just a truth, because none of it is yours anymore. What? You asked me to stop ruining your vibe, he said, and then, click. She stared at the phone, looked around like someone had played a joke and the camera crew was about to jump out. But there were no cameras, no edits, no second takes, just silence. The agent cleared his throat. Ma'am? She didn't respond, just slowly stepped back, dragging her suitcase like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her vision blurred, not from tears, but from disbelief so sharp it felt physical. She tapped her banking app. Login failed. Tried again. Failed. Notifications piled up. Your account has been removed from this login. Access revoked due to status change. Your subscription to Lifestyle Plus has been canceled. She stood still, frozen. No lounge access, no champagne, no room with a view, no trip. A woman brushed past her, shoulder bumping hers lightly. Excuse me, she said, annoyed. And just like that, her VIP delusion evaporated. She wasn't special, she wasn't glowing, she wasn't untouchable. She was just a woman standing in an airport, holding a dead phone, trying to figure out how everything had collapsed without her noticing the first crack. She dialed again, straight to voicemail. Panic bubbled into her chest, tight, hot, suffocating. But still, she didn't cry. Not yet, because part of her still didn't believe it. Not the trip being canceled, not the money cut off. not the door locked. What she didn't believe, what she couldn't believe, was that he had meant it, that he had left her, cleanly, quietly, and entirely on his terms. The car smelled like rental plastic in her own boiling rage. She yanked the steering wheel left out of the airport garage, tires screeching like they felt her humiliation too. The moment she merged onto the highway, she was already mid-voicemail. Are you kidding me right now? Canceling my trip? Freezing the cards? What kind of childish, passive-aggressive tantrum is this? Call me back. Right now. Next voicemail. This is unbelievable. You think this is okay? After everything I've put up with, you cancel a flight, my flight, and then hang up? Who even does that? Then one more. I swear, if this is some twisted way to teach me a lesson, you are going to regret it. You are so far out of line right now. And when I get back, she didn't finish that one. A truck cut her off, and she had to slam on the brakes. Her oversized sunglasses flew off the dashboard and cracked against the glove box. The rest of the drive blurred past in a chorus of honking horns, hands clenched around the steering wheel, and her increasingly desperate attempts to log into apps that now returned only error messages or login failures. Bank, cloud storage, smart home, all gone. She was still in full glam, still in heels, but the persona was unraveling. The glam had no audience. No poolside backdrop, just dead road signs and the distant ache of something she hadn't quite named yet, dread. By the time she pulled into the neighborhood, the sun was higher, bright enough to make her squint. Everything looked the same, but wrong. Too quiet, too still. A couple of neighbors were outside, the woman across the street who always watered her lawn in slippers, and the older man who jogged with his Labrador. Neither looked her way, not once. As she pulled into the driveway, her heart hit a different rhythm. Her key fob didn't open the garage. She tried again. Nothing. She stepped out, clacked up the walkway, suitcase in tow. The front door was locked. Not just locked, replaced. A bright new keypad she didn't recognize blinked at her in silence. No beeping. No welcome chime. Just an unblinking red light that said, "Not for you." Taped to the door in a clear plastic sleeve was a legal document. She leaned in, read slowly. Notice of separation initiated. Access revoked per filing to 223L. Legal residence status suspended. She blinked, reread it, then tore it down, crumpling it in her fist like that would undo it. "Open the damn door," she shouted to no one. "Are you in there? This is my house too. We built this together." Except they didn't. She remembered that detail now, the mortgage in his name, the refinance 3 years ago that she hadn't wanted to deal with. "Too many forms," she'd said. "You handle the boring stuff." The suitcase sat quietly on the porch, right where he must have placed it. Handle up, wheels clean, zipper facing out like a gift bag. Inside, she could see through the narrow window beside the door. The hallway was spotless, bare, no shoes, no keys on the hook, no jacket slung lazily over the banister. Her reflection looked back at her in the glass, hair perfect, makeup flawless, lips curled in disbelief. She tried the back gate, also locked. She marched to the neighbor's house and rang the bell. No answer. She saw the curtain twitch. Still, no one came. She was locked out, not just of the house, of the story she'd told herself, that she was adored, untouchable, that her whims were forgiven, her cruelty invisible, her mood swings just part of her charm. This wasn't a fight, it was a verdict. She slumped onto the porch step, pulled out her phone, and stared at it. No new messages, no calls, just a screen full of her own voice recordings, unanswered and decaying. Then, as if to twist the knife, a memory bubbled up. Her laughing just days ago, cocktail in hand, telling a friend over speakerphone, he's not going anywhere, he's too soft, he'd never actually leave. Turns out he didn't leave. He just removed her, effortlessly, silently, and completely. The porch step was cold, but she stayed there long enough for the makeup under her eyes to crease and crack. When rage turned into strategy, she pulled out her phone. Not to call him again, she'd finally accepted that wouldn't work, but to activate her second weapon. The court of public opinion. Her friends. Their friends. The couple's circle, she always said, would obviously take her side in any fight because, in her words, he's sweet but forgettable. She started with Lindsay, bridal shower bestie, shared Pilates sessions and gossip brunches, straight to voicemail. Next was David, one of his oldest friends, but she'd always thought David had a crush on her, so surely he'd answer. He did. "Hey," she said, in her most polished voice. "I need to talk to someone sane. You know what a mess he's made, right?" There was a pause. "Do I?" David replied flatly. She blinked. "He locked me out of the house, David. Froze everything. My cards don't work. This is insane." David didn't respond for a few seconds. Then calmly, "You posted a meme about his mom dying being a vibe killer. You tagged it under Need Evacay. It was a joke," she snapped, all charm evaporating. "You know my humor." "I do," he said. "That's the problem. Don't call again." Click. She stared at the screen, heart pounding in disbelief. She hadn't expected him to be the first door to close. She tried Rachel next, one of the wives from their dinner club group. "Hey, Rach, I'm guessing you've heard he's having a breakdown. I really need to—" "Why would I talk to you?" Rachel cut in, voice stiff. "You said my husband looked like a stroke victim and told people I was emotionally constipated. We just stopped smiling at you because he asked us to." "That was a joke too. Jesus, everyone's so sensitive all of a sudden." "Not all of a sudden," Rachel said, and hung up. Her fingers started to shake. It wasn't fear. Not yet. It was the realization that the mask wasn't just slipping. It had slipped, hit the ground, and shattered. People hadn't been laughing with her. They'd been waiting, watching, taking mental notes. She opened Instagram. Her feed was still bright, curated, brunches, pool selfies, candlelit dinners captioned with vague motivational quotes. But the DMs? Empty. No hearts. No, men are the worst. No support. She posted a story, black background, white text. "When someone turns on you without warning, it says more about them than you. Healing begins with truth, self-care, not the villain." She waited 5 minutes. Only 2 views. One was her cousin, the other was her sister. She dialed her next. "Wow," her sister answered dryly. "Didn't expect to hear from you." I need someone in my corner right now." Her sister laughed once. Short, sharp. "You told Mom I'd borrowed my personality from Pinterest. You said our family was genetic deadweight. Now you want comfort?" "That was years ago," she snapped. "No, it was last Thanksgiving," her sister replied. "Don't drag me into this. You said awful things. Own it." And then, like the others, click. She dropped her phone beside her and stared at the quiet street. She could still see her suitcase, neatly placed, untouched. Her lipstick was starting to dry and crack at the corners. She wiped at it furiously, smudging it worse. Her mind raced for some angle, a way to regain control, an audience, a microphone, someone who'd listen. But the spotlight had already moved, and this time, it wasn't following her. She had spent years crafting a persona, the effortlessly witty, brutally honest woman who told it like it is. But now that persona was standing alone on a porch she no longer owned, calling ghosts who no longer cared, and trying to spin a narrative no one wanted to hear. Because it turns out, when the punchline is your husband's dying mother, and the joke is always someone else's pain, people don't find it funny. And they don't forget. Her story was unraveling. But worse, no one was around to listen. The rental smelled like fresh paint and defeat. The walls were blank, aggressively white, like they were daring her to make the space feel like hers, knowing she couldn't. The living room window looked out on nothing, just a patch of brown grass and a crooked fence. No pool, no yard lights, no curated flower beds. She told herself it was temporary, just until she figured things out. But even she wasn't buying it. That morning, the doorbell rang, sharp and impersonal. A courier in a blue jacket handed her a thick envelope, had her sign a tablet, and walked off without a word. No smile, no small talk, just duty. She closed the door slowly, fingers already digging into the tear strip as she crossed the empty living room. Inside was a heavy manila folder. She pulled it open. The first page was a cover letter, neatly typed, dated, signed, from his attorney. Per the formal separation filing, enclosed you will find a full accounting and redistribution of all joint and shared assets. All items have been evaluated and processed through legal review. Per your signed prenuptial agreement, this document now governs ownership rights. She frowned, flipped to the next page, spreadsheet, a color-coded line-by-line list of everything they'd ever shared. The joint checking account closed, split 70-30 as per Clause 4A. The house transferred entirely to him. She'd signed the waiver during the refinancing and never read the fine print. Her car, leased in his name, already returned to the dealership. Furniture, evaluated, itemized. Anything she took had been documented and deducted from her share. Even the damn espresso machine had a depreciation column. She felt her pulse in her throat. Scrolled faster. There were footnotes. Receipts, timestamps, every move traceable. There was no room for negotiation. It was done. Already signed. Already filed. She grabbed her phone and dialed her attorney. He answered on the third ring, groggy. "Morning. What's up?" "I got this spreadsheet," she hissed, pacing. "He's trying to rob me blind. He froze everything. Now this. It's a total ambush." There was a pause, then a tired sigh. "I've seen the documents. He's ahead of this. Every detail is solid. He even filed the separation of intellectual property rights. Your blog domain, the shared Dropbox, even the damn Spotify account. He's 3 steps ahead, and you already signed half the enabling documents without reading them." "That's your job," she snapped. "No," he said. "My job is to advise. You made a lot of assumptions. Now you're staring at consequences." She hung up before she could scream. A knock on the door. Another courier. Another envelope. This one smaller. No return address. Inside she found a stack of photos. Printed, high quality. The first, her at a rooftop party, champagne in hand, mid-laugh, mouth wide, looking radiant. Next, her in a tight gold dress, dancing on a table. Then poolside sunglasses on, smirking as someone made a toast. Each photo was dated. Each timestamp matched a night he wasn't home. But what hit her wasn't the glamour. It was the contrast, because clipped to the last photo, her lounging at a wine tasting, was a copy of a hospice logbook page. April 9th, 7:48 p.m. Family visitation. Son arrived, patient alert but fatigued, requested additional time. She looked again at the photo from that night. She was holding a martini, while he was holding his mother's hand. She dropped the envelope. The papers. The photos. They fluttered like dead leaves around her bare feet. The devastation wasn't in the emotion. It was in the structure. He hadn't yelled, hadn't begged. He documented, filed, delivered with the same precision she once bragged about in him. Her confidence cracked, not because she'd lost everything, but because it was already gone long before she noticed. And now, every party, every post, every laugh she thought was harmless had become evidence, not in court, in his mind. And he'd just returned the favor, not as vengeance, as closure. The envelope was small, plain white, no return address, no stamp, just hand-delivered like a ghost had dropped it off in silence. It slid through the rusty rental mailbox with no warning, landing with the same weightless menace as a spider on a pillow. She found it mid-afternoon, in sweats and unwashed hair, mid-scroll through realtor listings she couldn't afford. She thought maybe it was legal, another blow, another invoice. She was used to paper now, legalese, certified mail. But when she opened it, all she found was a single black USB stick. No note, no explanation. She stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the connector like it might burn her. Then she plugged it in. The file on it was titled with one word, Shade. The screen flickered once, then came alive. It was him. Not now. Not cold and calculating. Not the version she feared and hated and tried to reach through voicemails. This was the version she hadn't seen in months. Gentle. Quiet. Sitting in a worn recliner, hunched slightly, next to a hospital bed. His mother lay beside him, her skin thin, her face pale, a scarf around her head where hair used to be. He was holding her hand. "She always said you brought sunshine," he began softly, looking down at his mother's fragile fingers in his. "She wanted to like you, tried even when she could tell something wasn't right." He looked up at the camera, direct, calm. But even she saw the shade. He exhaled, long and quiet. "I didn't want this to be a revenge story. I'm not interested in punishing you. I'm not that dramatic. This," he gestured to the camera, "this is preservation for me." For the part of me you kept erasing with your jokes and your selfishness and your he's too sensitive comments. She sat on the floor, frozen, legs crisscrossed like a kid being scolded in school. Her hand twitched toward the USB. She wanted to yank it out, end the footage, but she didn't. He leaned back in the chair. She didn't ask for much. She never did. Just wanted to be treated like a person, even when her bones were breaking under the weight of her own blood. And you, he paused just long enough. You couldn't even fake concern. He looked away for a moment, eyes wet but steady, then back to the lens. I used to believe you didn't understand, that if I explained it the right way, you'd finally see what you were doing. But the truth is, you saw it. You just didn't care. It didn't suit your weekend plans. The video cut to another clip. Same room, different day. She could tell by the clothes. He was in a gray hoodie this time. Thinner than she remembered. He looked exhausted. But still, he spoke with care. You laughed while she died. I heard you once on the phone. You were telling someone you couldn't wait for this chemo chapter to be over, so I'd stop being such a bummer. She winced. She remembered the call. She didn't think he'd heard. And you know what? He said still softly. You got your wish. It's over. A pause. You've always been good at spinning things. You've got a real talent for making people feel small when they call out your cruelty. But not this time. The camera zoomed in slightly, probably unintentional, the way phones sometimes shift. I didn't slam a door, he said. I just stopped holding it open. Then silence. The screen held on his face for a moment longer, then faded to black. She stared at the screen long after the video ended, hoping for one more frame, a parting shot, a second chance. Nothing. She finally pulled the USB out, set it on the coffee table like it might explode. Her hands trembled, but her eyes stayed dry. Not because she didn't want to cry, because she knew, finally, that she didn't deserve to. This wasn't a man scorned, it was a man freed, and now she had the footage to prove it. It was a gray afternoon that made everyone feel older, the kind of overcast that bleaches color from flowers and makes even laughter sound like an apology. The memorial was held at a community center, nothing grand, but warm enough. People filtered in quietly, faces solemn but familiar. Handshakes, shoulder pats, muted hugs. The air smelled faintly of coffee, old carpet, and carnations. She came alone, hair tied back, minimal makeup, a black coat that still looked expensive but in a quieter way now, like she wasn't dressing for an audience. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't trying to win the room. She'd heard through someone, maybe through everyone, that he would be here. She hadn't spoken to him in months. Not since the video, not since the spreadsheet, not since she found herself orbiting the cold edge of a life she once commanded like a queen. When she saw him, he was standing near the back, speaking to the widow. He held her hand for a long time, longer than was customary, and she leaned into his words like they mattered, like he knew how to say things people needed to hear. He looked different, not colder, not harder, just clean, settled, like the weight of her had been a storm he'd passed through, and now he stood on the other side, dry, whole, and weathered in a way that made him better. She waited until he stepped away toward the hallway, then followed. Hey, she said, just above a whisper. He turned, saw her, didn't smile. There was a long moment, years, lived between two heartbeats. You really planned all this? She asked, her voice barely audible over the creak of a nearby door. He studied her for a second, then nodded once. You made it easy. That answer hit her harder than she expected. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't sharp, but it was true. And truth was her least favorite mirror. I didn't know I was that cruel, she said, eyes lowered, throat tight. He didn't rush to reply. When he did, it was with the same calm that had gutted her through every step of his disappearance. That was the problem, he said. You never knew, and never cared to ask. She blinked. A tear didn't fall, but it trembled. He looked at her like she was a stranger whose story he'd once read, then nodded politely, stepped around her, and walked away. No drama, no last word, just gone. She turned to watch him move back into the room. People greeted him with small nods, quiet warmth. The widow clutched his hand again. Others leaned in when he spoke. They saw him. She, on the other hand, might as well have been wallpaper. No one made eye contact. No one pulled her into a conversation. Even the ones she used to command with charm and thinly veiled insults pretended to be occupied with their phones, their memories, their grief. She was alone, not just physically, socially, morally, historically. All that remained of her were stories that no one told anymore. She lingered a moment longer, then walked out into the wind. No one followed, no one called after her, no one noticed she was gone. And in that silence, she finally heard the truth. His exit had never been about revenge. It had been a reflection, held up so clearly, so calmly, she couldn't deny it anymore. She had been given every chance to see herself, and she never looked.